Hi everyone, I'm Jason Juritich and this is the Mobile Philosopher. In this video, we plan on looking at how to make professional presentations using Google Slides. Why Google Slides and not PowerPoint? Basically because, as we've mentioned in other videos, Google Slides allow you to edit the slides anywhere you want, on your phone, on your laptops, on your tablets, and the changes are automatically saved. And you can also open up the presentation on whosever device you like, even if you don't have your own. So it liberates you from having to worry about having the file with you or if the file is up to date. So having said that, let's jump right in here. This will be extremely practical, so we can see exactly what's really needed to make sure that the essentials in a Google Slides presentation allows you to present it professionally. So the first thing that I'm going to mention here is the size. If we go under File here, and then we go under Page Setup, you're going to see that it allows me some specific options here. It says widescreen, and then if I bring this down, it says 4:3, 16:10, and custom. Now, a nice little thing about Google Slides is you can actually use it almost as if it was Illustrator. If you change this, you can change it to any size that you want, actually. So it allows you to design many things, even if you didn't want to use it as a presentation. But in this case, what we want to use essentially is the classic one, which is when we go under Page Setup, we're going to see the widescreen 16:9. Why this one? Because in many instances, you're going to want to make a video out of your presentation. And because videos right now, both on YouTube and on other platforms, are still in 16:9, outside of the rare occasions where Facebook and Snapchat, for example, are starting to go vertical. But leaving those exceptions aside, normally almost everything is 16:9. So I highly suggest that for a professional presentation, you leave it as 16:9, even though the classic is 4:3. But if you want to use videos, then I highly suggest remaining this like this. So we're going to leave that as it is. Hop back out here, and we'll begin with the completely white slate here from 0. And we want to put something here so we can start designing this. Now, before we jump in here, I have to make a couple more comments. If you go here, typically people, what they'll do is they'll jump in a background. Okay, if I go into background, what this does is it changes the color, or I can put an image in. And the reason why I don't like using this very much is because it freezes. It freezes what's on the background of each slide. And this is a disadvantage because if you want to add images or text and you want to change the color of any of those things, then because you frozen the background, that means you have to go back and edit the thing on the rest of them. And the easiest way of doing things is just creating backgrounds. So my suggestion is not to worry about this unless you really want something that's not going to change. Unless you want a very dry, simple presentation where the only thing you're doing is presenting text and you just want to get it out there quickly, then you could use background, I guess, because it will imitate what you choose here on every single slide that you produce. But if what you're trying to do is a professional presentation, which looks good, then I would suggest actually not using this. So we're going to kill that. And if I want my presentation to have a different color background, then what we're going to do actually is come up here to Shape. And Shape, we'll just simply grab anything we want here, like this one. Come back out, and then draw this guy from top to bottom here. As you can see, we have blue bars, if you guys can perceive them there. These blue bars are telling me that I'm making it the same length and height as the slide itself. Obviously, over here, as you can see, it didn't quite get completely to this side. So we're going to have to grab this guy and pull him over until it allows me to cover it. Now, the important thing here is even if you go slightly over, it's okay. It just looks really bad if you go slightly under the size, the official size of the slide itself. So just make sure that you go slightly over or just right. Now that we have our square here, we can come back up and go here to what would be the color. And in the color here, it says fill color. We can change this to any color we so choose. So if I want this color, I can choose it like this. And that allows me to have backgrounds like this. Now, as you can see, there's a black line here, and we want to get rid of that. So we're going to go up here. We're going to select our little box here. And then we're going to go back up here to line color and make it transparent. And now finally we have something that's useful. Now, what happens if I want to keep on using this? No problem. I just go over here, and then this guy turns, this line here goes to blue in this case. And I just simply go Control C or Command C, and then Control V or Command V, and voila, I can keep on producing these as many as I want. So basically what you're doing is, after you set this up, you can multiply them, and then if you want to edit something, you just simply go over here and grab this guy and kill him if I don't want him there. Instead of making a background, which causes you more problems than trying to edit those in a more particular manner. So my suggestion is to just leave it like this. It works much, much better. And on top of everything else, the other advantage here with these is that we can make them transparent, so that if I want to put something behind them, then I can sort of hide it, and I can make it look very, very interesting in regards to combining things. So in this case, if I wanted to make something transparent, I just come up over here to fill color again, go in here, go to custom, and then I have the possibility of bringing this down, which allows it to be more transparent. Just so you guys know, these little checkered boxes here are representing a transparency. So the more I go down here, the more transparent it's going to get. So if I bring it all the way down and press OK, as you can see, now I just have white again. But funny enough, the shape that I stuck in here still has that color. So it depends on how you want to do it. But the transparency helps tremendously to modify each slide and make it unique. And that's why I much prefer putting things like this instead of trying to add backgrounds, whether it be images or anything else. So let's say in this case I want something nicer in the background. I want a picture. So we can just go in here to Insert up here, and then we're going to go to Image here. So we're going to click on this. And I have, right now I just chose a cat, but you have possibilities of uploading. You can take a snapshot or a screenshot. You can add the URL of the image. You can go to your own albums in Google Photos, for example. You can go to Google Drive, or you can search. So you have many, many options here. In this case, I can just put trees, for example, if I wanted a nicer background than a cat. And in this case, I could grab one of these backgrounds here in this case. So let's say this one looks nice. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to select it, and it will pop out here. Now, I have a couple of options. I can just brutally stretch this thing and just bring it over here and then try to bring it up. Let it go out. Or I can just literally go like this and bring it to the side and stretch it like that. Or I have another option. Just so you guys know, I'm going to go back and forth with undoing and redoing. The undoing is Control or Command Z, and the redoing is Control or Command Y in this case. So I have that option of stretching the image. Or I can also cut the image. So I can, as you can see here, crop. And if I do this, then I can make it more rectangular to respect the size of the slide. So I can bring this down, for example, and then press Enter. And now what I can do is move it to the corner here and then extend it like this. And as you can see, now because I've cut the image, it covers almost all of it. And so if I bring it over here, it won't be so bad anymore. I can bring it like this, and now it looks pretty darn nice. So that makes for a pretty good looking background. And as you can see here, I have the freedom of going back and forth, so it's really nice in this case. So now that I have this, I have the other option of clicking on the image, and I can go over here and it will say Image Options. So let's take a look at this here. The image options allow me again to make the image transparent. It's a very nice touch. This in this case, because I have a white background, is making it lighter. But if I had another type of background, it would change the color. So we're going to put this image on top of the other one so you can see what it looks like in a little bit. I also have brightness that I can play around with, which I don't want to use. And then I also have the contrast, which I can also do here, which also allows me to play around with this. So I can reset the adjustments in this case, Or I can actually recolor this to go to a black and white or something like this, which is also pretty extreme, but you can use it for certain things. I can go back and reset this. Yeah, this guy doesn't want to go back and resetting, so we'll have to come up here because for some reason as well it doesn't want to undo. So here we're going to pop out. We're going to go over here and undo what we did. So we can see, there we go. Now we're back in the shape here. Sometimes the undoing gets a little caught up just because maybe it's the internet or something else, so don't worry about it. If it happens, you can just jump out or even refresh the page and jump back in, because everything, as you can see up here, is saved. As long as you see all changes saved in Drive, you're perfectly fine. Let's grab this guy, and I'm going to select him like I have right now. You can see it's selected by this blue line here. I'm clicking on Control-C. I'm going back up here, and I'm going to put Control-V. And as you can see here, I have it's the same as it was before. But if I go into Image Options here, and then use Transparency, I can bring this guy, and now he's got a nice pink tint to himself. I can bring it down here. So as you can see, it gives it its own nature there. So it's sort of faded out in this case, and pink. So it depends on what you want to do in this case, but it gives you many, many possibilities of making transparent the image and allowing that each slide speak for itself in this case. And even though I'm using the same image here, it still has its own way of being, its own nature up here that allows a richness to the presentation instead of just a brute repetition in this case. So you can do many, many things with images, and you can play around by putting them in the back or in the front, as you can see here. But we want to keep on adding things. So in this case, our next objective here to make this look cool, and we want to add some other, we want to add some text and some images so we can start playing around with the presentation here. So let's go up here and insert some more stuff. Let's go into Insert here. We have Image. And this time we can put cat again, so make it simplified. We can choose one of these guys. He looks nice. We can grab him if we want, and we'll select him and put him inside. Now, as you can see, normally Google just throws them in as the biggest as it can, so we're just going to drop that guy down here and pop him over here in this case. And the other thing that we're going to do before we go anywhere else, so we're going to add some text. So we'll grab a text box that's up here, as you can see. Come over here, and we're going to pop that in. And we're just going to add some dumb stuff here in uppercase just for the fun of it. And we'll just put the cat is cold. Okay, now, if we leave it like this, Google has an option that you can use to play around and see how you'd want this formatting. Because right now we have various problems that we're going to have to solve. First of all, as you can see here, the text is being eaten by the background. And what that means is, and this is another extremely important point for professional presentations, you never want your text to be eaten up by the background. It can't blend in. Otherwise, the audience is not going to be able to read what you're presenting, and it's extremely frustrating for the audience. So we're going to have to fix this because this is definitely not going to work. And the other big problem here is this cat is just sort of floating in the middle of nowhere. It's not. There's no relationship between this and the background. It's literally as if I had closed my eyes and threw the cat on top of the photo here. So we're going to do a couple things here. First, we're going to see what Google says about this. So what I can do is I can actually go down to the bottom right-hand corner. What we have here is we have this little guy here that says Explore. And if I click on Explore, what Google is going to do is going to say build beautiful slides. And sometimes it will give me options to change the presentation in a better way or not. So here I can say learn more. It'll pop up a new suggestion type of thing. It says you might want to see image information to help you finish your work. Here it gives me the possibility of layouts, web search, images, Google Drive, etc. So if we go back here, it doesn't really offer me a whole bunch of stuff right now because of the fact that it doesn't really recognize what I'm doing. And the reason why normally is because I've just grabbed the image here. If I grab the cat and click on Explore, it's still not giving me anything. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that I go here. I'm going to get rid of this rose background. I'm just going to grab my cat here in this text box. And I can do this by clicking on one, pressing down the Shift key, and then clicking on another. And it doesn't make a difference how many things I have. I can do that all the time. Now, because I have an image in the background, the only disadvantage of playing around with images and backgrounds and not making it a background itself is that if I try to grab these two things, as you can see, this poor guy moves around. So typically you could just grab your mouse and drag it like this, but as you can see, it's just trying to grab the image. So in this case, unlike if the background was blank, which we're going to experiment right now, here I'm going to have to click on one, press Shift, and then click on another one. It's still trying to grab my image in the background. Darn thing. Now I have my two things. Let's do a Control-C there, and we can go down to 4 here, and we'll just paste them in there. So now that I have these two things, if I go to Explore, you can see that it's turned into yellow, whereas when I go here, it's turned into gray. And that would indicate that it's not giving me any options, where here it is giving me options. So I'm going to click on this Explore now. And as you can see, it's giving me various examples of things I can do to spice this slide up. And actually, these are actually very, very good, and I would highly suggest using them, especially when you haven't played around with the slide before. Why? Let's just grab this one here, which is a typical one that Google uses. We're just going to pop that back out right now just to analyze this. So let's look at the difference between this guy and this guy. As you can see here, the cat is just thrown on the top, as we mentioned before. Nothing's happening there. The text here is totally absorbed by the background, or at least partially. They look totally sporadic. They don't look ordered. They don't look symmetrical. They don't look anything. And this looks very, very sad and poor, even though the background looks pretty cool. So if we go to 4 here, we're going to see that now we have something symmetrical. The cat is now taking up half the screen here. And on the other side, we have very clear text. This looks really, really good. It's symmetrical. It doesn't look like the cat was just thrown on something. It looks like it was placed there on purpose. Here we have text that's bigger. We have text that we can clearly see. And I can go in here and edit all this, obviously. Well, except for maybe the pre-made background that Google offered me. But we're going to do the same thing really soon. The point being is that if you want to do something quick, at least it gives you some idea of how presentations actually look, instead of you throwing things down and just hoping that someone's going to really like it. If we go back to Explore here, let's look at another option. We got this option. As you can see here, now the cat has been turned to black and white. We have a circle around the cat, and we're going to see how to do that. And now we have text that's extremely clear and easy to read. This again, it's a very simplified thing. But there's another thing here that's very important. That is, we have equidistance. It means if you look at the space between the edge of the cat and this, it's not exactly, but almost the same as this to this. I mean, there's a type of order here that allows my mind to understand that I'm trying to present something in a clean and symmetrical, ordered way. And that's what we're looking for when we're doing presentations. We want this type of presentation. We don't want this. This looks horrible. This is clean. This is ordered. This is symmetrical. It's easy to read. All these types of things are what we're looking for when we're trying to do a professional presentation. Now we have some other ones here. Some look okay and some don't look so nice. But most of them, as you can see, are all underlying the same thing. Clear text that has a very stark contrast from the background. The images are big and they're clear. They're symmetrical with the text. And all these characteristics are essential no matter what we do. Now let's just leave that alone. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to go back and try to fix our poor text up here in a manual manner, because sometimes what Google offers is not something we want to use. So how about we fix this one up? So let's take the cat again and let's fix him to where he's actually somewhat interesting. So we're going to grab him and pull him down. And it makes no difference, it goes over the text right now. So we have this here. Then we have our text. Now what in the world are we going to do with this? Because obviously our text here is being devoured still by the background, and it's probably too small. So we're going to grab, first of all this text, and we're going to make it bigger. We're going to go up here, we're going to grab this, we're going to make it 24. That looks much, much better. But still the problem is the background's fighting against my text. I still can't see this clearly, and my audience would be suffering like crazy if I left it like this. So now let's look at a couple of options that we have in order to fix this problem. The first option that I have is to actually change the color of the background of this text. So actually I can go up here, and as you can see there's nothing here. But if I grab this and I click on white, you can see now that it has changed into white. Now, this does not in any way, shape, or form look cool. So we got to change this. How can we change this to make it look nice? We can go up here, make sure we don't have the cursor here because it means it's going to try to play on the text. We're going to go out and we're going to click on this. And if you are in here, the easiest way of fixing this is just pressing escape. What escape does is it allows you just to go out one level. If I press escape again, it would go out to the slide here. So if I click on this, now it's not on anything, it just went back out here to 2. But if I go here and just click on escape, now I can play around with the text box. So this white is just in too much of a contrast. Doesn't look good at all. So we're going to go over here to the fill color again, and we're going to use that transparent quality here. We're going to go over here and grab this, and we're going to bring this guy down a little bit. And we click on OK. Now that looks much better. Why? Because I can still see the background, but the text now is very, very clear. And I can bring this down if I want to the very bottom, for example, and bring it up. And now what's happening is that it's fighting against the background, but in a nice manner. They're playing fair this time. And I have various choices here. I can do plenty of things to make this look nice in this case. I can leave it like this to where it's filling just half of the image, or I can bring it over here, for example, until I hit that, and leave it like that to where it's sort of like this. But this doesn't look very nice yet. I can go over here, bring it over like this, and leave it like that, but it still doesn't look too cool. So the best thing to do here is I could actually go like this and bring it all the way over and just simply let the background fade away. And I have my text, and the text here can be moved wherever I want. So I can grab this text and go over here and then place it like this, or I can place it in the middle, things like that. And this actually doesn't look too bad with the text in the middle. So I can play around with it like this, and it's looking pretty cool. I mean, there's nothing really seriously something out of place with this. And it's something that people could look at. But maybe we can make the text just slightly bigger. So let's go over here and grab this. Now it's very important to remember that this you can change, in a more precise manner. You have to choose these down here. So I can go up here and click on 28, for example, and keep on playing around with this until I have the size I want. But this is actually looking pretty good. And it looks much, much better than what we had before. So because we have this in a centered format, even though the cat is not taking up exactly half of the slide, it doesn't have to. Because remember, what we're looking for is symmetry. We're looking for something that the mind conceives as ordered. There's something that it's working together and not something just thrown on something else. So in this case, we have something that actually looks pretty darn good. Now, this is something simple, but we're going to have to work on something that's a little more complex. So let's go back up to the first one here. And let's start playing around with something that's going to be a little tougher to work with. This time we're going to insert 3 images, and we're going to look at something totally different now. So here we're going to grab this cat. We're going to leave him, and we're going to have to make him smaller because he's too big. So we'll pop him over here, and we're going to insert another one. Take this guy, put him in. Looking pretty good. Let's bring him down. And let's grab another one to finish this off. We'll grab the one who's winking here. And we're going to bring him down too. Okay, so now we have 3 images, again, on top of another image. And there's something here that we have to be very, very careful about, which is that first of all, just like we saw with what Google offered us for symmetry, we're going to need to do the same thing with this first slide here. We need to fix this. This looks really, really bad. Again, it looks like just things were thrown on the top of the background picture. So what do we want to do? This is another thing that we're going to outline right now. We need symmetry and order within these things. Okay, so what makes this look nicer is, first of all, we want to make sure that things are the same shape and size, if at all possible. Now, you can break that rule if you're trying to do something like a collage or something like that, where you're looking for order within disorder. But that's something that you should try doing after you understand how to do the basic principles of a professional presentation. That's not something you want to fight it right now. So the essential here is to make sure that you don't fall into the danger of doing something out of place when you're trying to do something like a collage, which is more artistic. What we're going to do right now is we're going to follow the classical principles and make sure all these things look basically the same. So let's start editing these guys up. First of all, we want to make sure that they're the same size. So here, what we have the possibility of doing, we have two options. We can either just raise it and warp the picture, or we can bring this guy out and we can leave him like that. So now I know that these two are the same height. But if I go over here to the red line there, I'm going to see, whoa, this guy is a lot longer than this guy. Now, I can't leave it like that if I wanted to leave this guy and this guy the same size so that I could have like a counterbalance. But in this case, we're going to make life simple, and we're just going to make sure these guys are the same. So what we want to do here is we're going to actually go up and crop this guy to where I can get him the same size. And as you can see here, there's a blue line that comes out. It's trying to indicate to me that this is now, in theory, going to be the same size as the cat behind it. And that's what those blue lines there are trying to indicate to me. So I'm going to actually drop it like this, press Enter, so that the cat is actually now cut. Now if I go here, I'm going to see that now the cat is exactly the same size, both in width and, in this case, in height, as you can see here. So these two guys are ready to go. They're pretty much set. So let's get this last guy up and running. So here, if we go down here, we're going to see, okay, he's pretty good on the height thing, but he's in the center. So we're going to have to go over here, crop this guy, and bring part of him over this way. And then we're going to grab this guy and see if we can get him the same size as the others. As you can see that the blue lines come out again. And he's going to have his head cut off a little bit, but we could always edit that later on. Okay, as you can see here, I grabbed the wrong piece, and so what it was trying to do is trying to resize instead of crop. So we're going to have to go back here, and we have to make sure we grab the black one. Sometimes you grab the wrong one. And here we have him being cropped like this, and I can go back and forth until this guy actually coincides with his friends. Here, the blue lines come out, so we can leave it like this, press Enter, and we're ready to go. Just a quick thing here. Now, even though I pressed Enter, if I click on this guy and go back to cropping, you can see that it will always give you the original size image. So you can always go back and redo something or change something if you so wish. We're just going to leave it as Enter. And now, in theory, our wonderful images are going to be the same height and width. And so we're set to go with these. Wonderful. Now, what's the next step? We need to get these guys equidistant from each other, so that we have a possibility of playing around with it. So how am I going to do this? Well, again, we have to click on one, click on Shift, and then grab the others. And now we're going to start playing around with the images in regards to their order to make them professional and symmetrical. So how are we going to do this? We're going to go up to the part that says Arrange here. And clicking on Arrange, we're going to find a lot of possibilities. So we have, for example, Rotate. I can flip these horizontally and vertically if I don't like the way that they're presenting themselves. If I go horizontal, for example, they get flipped this way. And you might need that for when you're doing a presentation. You don't like the way the image is focused, so you can flip them around if you want. Let's move them back. So this is a very nice thing to have. And then we have Distribute. Let's see what Distribute does. If I do distribute horizontally, the only thing it did is move the cat in the middle a little bit. It's confused because we haven't left a lot of space here, so it doesn't really know exactly what to do with that. But if I go here and I click on Align Vertically and I go Middle, as you can see, what that did is that it lowered and raised everything so that we have them all on the same line. So that's a first step right there that's going to help us to fix that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring this guy over here. We moved him up, unfortunately, so we're going to have to go back. But as you can see, if I move this guy a little bit over, now that we have spaces in between, if I grab them again, and I go over here to arrange, and I go to distribute horizontally, you're going to see that now the spacing between these two and these two are now the same. And this is what we wanted. And we need to go back and go to align vertically, okay, and middle, and they're going to be pushed in such a way that now they're equidistant from each other here and here, and there's not one above another one. So now this is really good because it's now all aligned. The last thing we need to do is go back to arrange, and we need to center this guy on the page. So we're going to center this guy horizontally in this case, see what happens. It gets stuck in the middle. Now if I wanted to go vertically, I could also do that, but I don't want that because I want to put text above. So I can bring these guys down and leave them like this. Now this looks pretty darn good, but we're going to do some other modifications. I want the spacing here to be a little wider, so I'm going to take him and I'm going to use my arrow keys now, and I'm going to move them over. A very important point here is if I press shift and arrow, I'll go pixel by pixel. If I let go of the shift and use the arrow, it's going to be much bigger. So if I grab him and do that the same thing, now I'm going to grab all three, and I'm going to go back over here to arrange, and we're going to distribute these guys again horizontally. As you can see, now the cats have the same space in between, and I can move this guy around and make it look nicer in this case. I can keep on playing with this until I have something that I want. But at least I have something now that looks pretty nice. Now these three images here, we have one more option. Let's say I want these three to be circles instead of squares. So up here it doesn't come popping out. But if I come over here and I click on this guy and I click on this little arrow that's next to the cropping, what this does is it allows me to change the image into a shape. So in this case I'm just going to choose the circle and not do anything else with it. Choosing the circle allows the cat to remain this way. Now it's sort of an oval shape, and why is it doing an oval shape? Because it's trying to respect what the original image was, because it's not an exact square in this case. If I go over here and click on the same thing, shapes, and I click on the circle, again it's going to do an oval, trying to respect what was there. If I go down here to this guy, it's going to do the same thing. There's no differences here, and you have plenty of shapes that you can use to play around. But unfortunately, because these guys weren't exactly squares, it's not going to respect that. So basically, I have the cats right now like this. I'm going to come over here. I can click on the shape again and click on circle, and I'm going to have this guy the same way. Now, they're all the same in this case. But I can come over here, and I can modify this to make it a circle. So I can grab this guy and bring him over, and it's going to change the image a little bit, but I can bring it into a circle figure if I want. If I go over here and grab him, as you can see that my blue lines are coming out telling me that they're going to be the same shape. I'm going to grab him, bring him over, there are my blue lines, and again I have my three. So again, what I can do is I can bring this over if I want, bring this guy over if I want, grab all three again, come up here to arrange, distribute horizontally, and now I have my wonderful circles with the cats inside of them. So this allows me to make the presentation very nice. It looks symmetrical, looks pretty darn good in this case. So now we need to add our text. We're going to go up here and add some text boxes. I'm going to put a text box over here, and we're going to put, this is the cold cat. And to save us time, we have a couple things here. First of all, we can reduce this. If we're not going to have a text box that's super big, we can just grab that, leave it like this, or I can make it bigger, especially if I'm going to make the text bigger. So I can go over here, click on this guy, press 18. We're going to bring him back. And if I don't want to keep on repeating this for the other ones, I can also grab this, Control-C, Control-V, Control-V, spit out some ones here, pop these guys over here, and grab this, bring them over here. As you can see, the red lines are telling me if it's going to be lined up with the rest of it, so I can just simply grab them here to put them there. So if I move these around, you're going to see the red lines are indicating, and the blue ones, the blue and red lines here are indicating that something's either it's in the right place, it's centered with something else, etc., etc. And then if I grab this guy and grab him and him, I can bring them down like this, and we're ready to go. Now obviously, again, these things get affected by the background, so I can hop up here I can grab bold and put it like this. Obviously, this is going to help, but it changed the text box sizes. So I can go over here and make this maybe, for example, 16. I can play around with this until I find them. Make the text centered so I don't have to fight that. And it looks slightly better. But if I still have problems with this, I'm going to have to change the background. But in this case, instead of changing the background of each of these text boxes, which would take forever, we're going to do another thing that helps us here, which is we can add a shape again. And this time we're going to use a rectangle. And we come over here and bring this around to where it covers everything. Now, obviously we have a problem here because it's covering our text that we're using. But we have a thing here that we can do, which is if I click on this guy and I click on order, it's going to say send backward or send to the back. So backward means one level, send to the back means it's going to go even behind the image I have here for my background. So we're just going to say send to back. And in this case, funny enough, it went behind the image. So let's go back here, order, send backward, and as you can see, in this case, I was wrong. The back and backward allows you to go one level. So let's go back here, order, send back. Now, send backward here, as you can see, it gives us symbols for shortcuts. So I can have my controller command and then the arrow. And this helps tremendously to do this much quicker. So if I just go, control down, it's going to bring it behind the other text and I don't have to fight it anymore. And then again, as we said before, the white background is not cool, so we're going to go over here and we're going to do the fill color, custom, bring this guy down so we're not fighting the hardcore color there. And now the final thing is to get rid of this black line around it, transparent, and we're set to go. So this is obviously not the best in the world, but at least we have the possibility of seeing the text that's coming out. It doesn't look bad, and we can use this. Now, the only problem here is that, again, the cats there's a bigger space below than there is above. We want to fix this, so we're going to go over here, grab all three, take our arrow, play around with this until more or less the space between cat here and this area here is the same more or less as this down here, so our brain understands that we're trying to do something symmetrical and ordered. So we have various things that we can do here to play around with text and images, and that's really good, so that allows us to do various things here. Now, we're going to go back. Now that we've seen the various options that we can use to play around with this, let's underline. Transparency looks very, very good, and it's something for a modern presentation. I would highly suggest using transparency. You can do what Google did, which is use hardcore colors, but transparency looks pretty darn nice as well, and you can do a lot with it. Having said that, you can choose however you want to do this. It really makes no difference if you do something like this, or something like this, or something like this, but as long as you follow and respect the essential things, which is symmetry, clarity, and color contrast, then you'll be in very good shape for your presentation in this case. So going back up here, there's another thing that many times we have a problem with when we're doing presentations, and that is, going back to my cat here, the amount of text that I can put. And it's extremely important to take into consideration you cannot put paragraphs. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to a Google slide here, or rather a Google website. And a Google website, funny enough, more and more websites nowadays are presenting themselves as if they were presentations in a certain sense. Before that wasn't the case, but now it is. So here we have Google's website for Chromebooks. And as you can see, there's plenty of stuff here that allows you to see. We have an image here, we have a space, and then we have some text here floating in nothingness. Sometimes this looks good, especially when you're trying to underline something, but if it's too much text, it can cause a problem. So it depends on what you want. Now, this type of thing is, if it was for a presentation, it would probably be too much. We're just going to grab this for the sake of argument, just to use it for our wonderful presentation here. We're going to go back over here. We're going to Control All, and then we're going to get rid of that and put this one in here. Okay. Now, just a little trick here. If you're grabbing text from somewhere else, you can actually do a Control-Shift-V, and what that does, it will paste the text without any format, or rather with the formats you've been using in your presentation up until now. If you just click on Control-V, then you're going to have to be fighting the text format and things like that, which is not very useful. So, as you can see here, The text size is wonderful, but we have a big problem in that this looks like a paragraph, and this is another horrible, horrible thing that people that are watching your presentation are going to hate. We have got to divide this up and make it much more digestible when someone is giving a presentation. So in this case, first of all, periods are a natural separator here, so we're going to click on Enter there. When you have this much text, looking and making it centered looks horrible, so we're going to go over here and put this guy, we can have two options. We can either make it justified in this case, which may or may not be okay. You have to play around with that, or you can just align it to the left. We'll leave it like this for right now. But this top part here is still way too much text. So we're going to have to say Chromebooks are automatically up to date. So we're going to kill this comma here. And then we have this, so we really don't need it. So we can get rid of it and press Enter. Make an uppercase here. You'll always have the latest virus protection, which is good. I like that idea. And you can also play around with this. It just says, along with the latest features like voice search. Here, the long in a separate manner is going to be weird. Here we could actually just get rid of this. You can take this guy, for example. We'll take him. You can put him here and then put half. And now we have basically the ideas. We can get rid of the periods. The only thing here with the periods is the following. Sometimes you want to put them, sometimes you don't. Obviously, when you're writing something, a complete sentence needs a period at the end. A presentation can sometimes break that rule. And the most important thing here is that it's uniform. Meaning, if you are on a slide, you could never do something like this where you have one period here and one period here and then not up here. It looks horrible. So you have to make sure you avoid that at all costs to make sure that it's uniform. So you either get rid of the periods or you put them on, but most of the time, given the fact in presentations, you're really not doing or using complete sentences. If the safest bet is just to let them go, because if you have some slides where there might be a complete sentence and some slides are not, the best thing to do is just avoid the periods and make sure that it looks uniform so that it doesn't look out of place in this case. Good. Now we have our text divided up, but this still looks horrible because it still looks like a bunch of text connected, and this is going to make our audience suffer tremendously. So what are we going to do with this? We're going to grab this, we're going to select it, and we're going to go up to the top here, way up here, and we're going to see it says more. Now you may not have this more, you may just have these options floating around, but what we're going to do is we're going to do bulleted lists, and we're going to grab this guy and we're going to click on him. Now, this only partially solved our problem. We still have another problem, which is that it still looks like a blob of text. Looks slightly more ordered, but not getting there yet. So we have to do one other thing to make sure that this thing looks nice, which is we have to go over here to line spacing, and it says add space after list item. Very, very important. You always need to do this when you're playing around with a lot of text. So let's click on that guy. And now we have something that's fairly usable. Not the best in the world yet, but at least we're going in the right direction. And if we had to leave it like this, it would be okay. We're just going to make this a little bit smaller, even though that sounds counterintuitive, just so it's not filling up everything. And now this looks a little bit better. We could even make this into bold if we wanted to, if we felt like it needed more strength. Sometimes using bold makes it a little tacky, so you have to be very careful about using this, because normally not using bold allows you a little more formality here. Now, you would think that this is plenty strong to not worry about the background, but we still have the problem that because we're dealing with trees, or we're dealing with an image that's not uniform in the background, sometimes it can still confuse the eye on what it's looking at. So if you want to be absolutely sure excuse me, that your audience can read your text, you need to play around with the background transparency again and make it just slightly less. So we're going to go to custom here and bring up this here a little bit more so that the text, the trees didn't disappear, but we have a higher guarantee that the audience is going to be able to read our text. And so we can sort of leave it like this without any major problems. And the bullet points, again, it's just for catching the person's eye. It's not necessary but it helps so that the person can read them in a quicker manner, so to speak. So that's your free decision. Some people like using them, some people don't. Can you use 1 to 4? Yes, you can. It just gets a little confusing after a while, especially if you're trying to go from one slide to another. So if you're going to use 1 through 4, just try to make sure that the slides are autonomous, meaning that if I keep on using numbered lists in the next slide, that the audience automatically knows that I'm starting a new list because I'm trying to present another idea. Sometimes what people do, and it doesn't look that good, is that they go 1 through 4 here, and then the next slide they try to go 5, 6, 7, 8. It doesn't work very well. So my suggestion is to either use the symbols here, the bolded list here, which allow you to not have to worry about what your audience is trying to figure out in regards to the list, or B, make sure that if you use numbers, you try to isolate the numbers to one slide, and you don't try to continue the numbers afterwards, because it is slightly tough on the audience to continue looking at that and figuring out where the heck they are. It just forces them to try to remember something in the past. It gets them distracted, and then they don't focus on what you're trying to say right now. So these are the essentials to make sure that things look more or less nice within your presentation. Again, what you want to do is always be constant about the symmetry, meaning my little bullet point right here, he's got a certain distance here. I want to make sure that more or less that's the same here. If I want to be very picky with this, then what I can do is I can hop out, I can escape, and then I can use my shift and move it back and forth to see if that will help me with what I'm doing. Now, as you can see here, sometimes moving it around is going to affect, for example, the image and things like that. So you have to be careful of how you want to play around with this. Or you can also just grab the side of this and pull them back in, and sometimes that will help as well. So you have to play around with this to see. And as you can see here, I messed it up because there's a small space here indicating that something isn't working. So I had to go out, use Shift, use another pixel movement there, and ready to go. What's the problem here? I'm still fighting this part here. There's a slight dark edge here. So I'm going to have to bring him out a little bit to where it hits red, and that should fix the problem. Now, most of your audience may not even perceive the errors I just did here, but some will. And some will say, okay, the presenter didn't even want to dedicate enough time to make sure his presentation looked nice. So you have to make a decision there on how much time. This is actually taking more time to fix. But if you want to make sure it looks professional, you want to look at those details to make sure that things don't get thrown around, doesn't look like it's out of place, something was off or something like that because you didn't want to dedicate the time to it. So as you can see here, we have various options to make sure that our presentation looks as good as possible. Another little detail here that I want to mention is that you have a lot of fonts that you can play around with. This is Arial. If I grab this and I go up here to Arial, I also have Calibri times Roman. I have quite a few possibilities here. But if I wanted to get more fonts, I can actually click on here, and it will allow me to grab more fonts. So if I'm not satisfied with the ones that are there, I can always add new ones. So for example, I can go to one that's Proxima Nova. This one's actually a pretty cool one, and it allows me to be slightly more professional. It depends on how you use it, of course. And you can click on that, and then go up here, and you just have to make sure you have it there. So for example, here I have Proxima Nova, and if I click on that, it's just going to turn the text slightly more formal. Google actually likes using Proxima Nova or something similar in some of their websites. So you're never going to go wrong, and it looks very nice and formal and slightly more formal than Arial, I would have to say. So you can change your font to make sure that it looks good and professional without having to worry about or doubting about whether your audience thinks it's too tacky. You never want to make a presentation with people doing something like this. A lot of people think they want to go aggressive, so they start throwing things out like this. This is bad, 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 bad. You never want to do this. Why? One, because it doesn't look professional. That's clearly the case. But there's another big problem here, and that is many fonts are not easily read, meaning your audience, again, is going to suffer. And the big problem here of everything I've mentioned is that if your audience is distracted with the text, with the images, with the symmetry, with anything like that, your audience will not listen to you. And we have to remember, the presentation is not what's talking. It's not what's giving me information. The The person is giving me information. I want to hear the person. The presentation needs to be an aid. It's not the central point of anything. Unless, okay, of course, you have something special like an information type presentation where the information needs to come out and the presenter is just there just to move slides around. But most of the time, what I want to hear, or who I want to hear, is the presenter. I don't want to focus on the slides. But the second I try to read something and I cannot read it because something looks bad, then obviously I'm not going to hear the presenter and I'm probably going to miss out on some essential information. So this you never want to do in any way, shape, or form. So we're going to undo that and go back to a nice formal type of font. So again, these are extremely essential principles to make a professional presentation. Anything that gets deviated from what we've presented here, you're going to have problems sooner or later. Now again, if you're an experienced person doing a presentation, you can bend the rules, you can play around, you can add collages, but it's extremely important to take the essential this into account before you start doing something more fancy, because you do not, I repeat, want your audience to suffer. Now here, funny enough, Google is trying to offer me an option. If I go down here, it's actually taking away many of the things that have made this look professional. So do not think that using the Explore option essentially gives you everything you need. This one, what it did is allowed me to understand the way of playing around with two images. And that gives me an idea. And this is another thing you can do. You don't have to choose what Explorer offers you, but rather it can give you ideas. And that's an awesome thing about Explorer. So maybe I don't like this because now it looks too simplified. This looks too empty. The background looks empty and the text looks floating around. It could work. Yeah, of course you can do it. And it would be professional enough. Yes, so you don't have to worry about that either. But it still looks a little bit empty. So it's your choice. If you want simplified, go ahead and do what Google's offering here. Or you can grab the ideas and modify your presentation to do what Google is offering, but in your own way. So if I don't like that, I'm just gonna go back to mine, which I feel like is slightly more formal. So you have your options. Now we've gone through the essential here. There's a couple other things here that are extremely essential for a presentation. That is your first slide. Let's bring up the three here. We'll bring it on top. As you can see here, you can move these slides around very easily without any problem. And you can add slides up here as well. So the basic options here you can always use, and there's no problem. And you have tons of things over here, like I mentioned. We're not going to go in this video through these because I have other videos that explain the essential parts of Google presentations. But you have a lot of options here that you can use. You can even take voice type speaker notes they have here. You can add tables and things like that. So you have plenty of stuff here. But my idea today is not to go through all of the options of Google presentations, but rather just to underline what makes it professional. So going back up here, what we need to take into consideration is the first slide needs to present what we're talking about in a formal manner. So I can actually just grab this, grab my background. I can Command-C here and bring it up here, and put it up here again, and play around with this. Now this is already semi-transparent. So what I can do here is I can grab another shape. Let's just grab a rectangle, put this guy up here, and we're just going to do the opposite of what we did with another one. So this guy's floating around. We're actually going to make him black this time. So we're going to, boom. Now he's pretty aggressive, but I'm not worried about that. We're going to go down here and place on custom. We're going to bring up the transparency a little bit, so that looks pretty cool. And now what we want is a text box. We're going to pop the text box in here. And we'll make it more or less like this. And here what we want to do is we're gonna put a title. Okay, so we're gonna put cats in the world. Obviously the text is totally lost here. We're gonna fix this guy up, no problem. Come over here, text color, put that guy white. Then we're gonna make that a lot bigger. And then we're gonna go to Approximate Nova that we love so much. We can even make this guy a lot bigger if I wanted to. That looks pretty cool. We're going to modify the text box so it adjusts to the text. This is something that helps tremendously as well when you're modifying or positioning text boxes and other images. I would highly suggest doing this after you're done writing out your presentation, is adjusting the text boxes to the size of the text. This guy, we have a couple options. We can grab him around here. As you can see, we have our red lines that help me to put this guy in the right place. So that actually looks pretty cool. We don't have to do too much about that. So we have our title, But we need one other thing here, and that is the full name of the presenter. You never want to leave it like this. Now, if everyone in the audience knows who you are and 100%, that's fine. But if there's any doubt that anyone could remotely have any doubt of who you are, you need to add your full name. So we can actually just grab this box and cut and paste and bring them down here. Now, obviously, in this case, this is not gonna. This looks a little weird, so we're gonna have to bring this puppy down here, and we can leave them like that, or we can modify them other ways. But right now, we're just gonna copy paste, so we don't have to keep on wasting our time. And we can move this guy down like this, or grab him with the mouse. It really doesn't make a difference. So obviously, it's not gonna be the same. We got to grab this guy, come in here. We're gonna bring him way down. Okay, we can. That's probably a little too small. We'll bring in 24. That should be fine. And here we're just going to put a name here. So we can say something like that. Again, we're going to readjust our text box so it looks okay. And we'll move them around here. Now I can grab this and go up here. I don't have to keep on fighting this. I can go over here and center on page horizontally. Boom, there he is in the center. And that's looks okay. It still might be too much of a contrast with this guy. You can play around with this and put it another way on the bottom. But the idea here is you need to make sure that in your presentation you have your title and then you have your full name if the people in the audience don't know who you are. Extremely, extremely important. And then you can play around with the formatting here. It doesn't have to be like this. You can actually bring this over if you wanted and do something like this. Just making sure that the text inside the box is centered, otherwise it won't look right. So you can do something like this, so it's not so much of a contrast with the main one. This looks okay, or you can throw it to the side, things like that. It depends on your creativity. But the point being is that you need to make sure that you have these two elements here so that the presentation comes out correct and looking professional, and we're not wondering about what the heck you're talking about. So now that we've spoken about most of this stuff here, let's go through finally with the slides themselves. How many slides do you need? You need as much as you need. That sounds really redundant, obviously, but the point being here is that you want to make sure that during your presentation you're giving the audience the essential information so that when you're speaking they can psychologically very quickly read through this as fast as they can. So this is actually the maximum amount of text you want on a slide. This is like going to the limit. Why? Because it was going to take them quite some time to read this. And the more time they need to read, the less they're listening to you, which is not the objective here. So I would suggest not putting any more text than what you have here. You can actually almost count these words to find out how many there are, but I wouldn't go beyond this because otherwise people are going to be suffering with listening to you and reading the text. So something clear, something precise, and each slide can have less text. That's fine. There's no problem. You can have one line of text if you want. A lot of people actually just do one-liners. And the one-liners actually give a summary of what I'm going to be dictating for the next minute or two, for example. And there's no problem with that. Why? Because the image in the line allows my mind to quickly absorb the information I want. But if you need essential information, make sure it's ordered, make sure it's not in paragraph form, make sure I can read it quickly and that my brain doesn't get distracted too long with it. And the amount of slides depends completely on the amount of information. Normally, a slide will reflect an idea. So if you have an outline, and the outline has 5 points, you're going to want at least 5 slides. That's going to be a rule of thumb. Maybe some of the points are going to have a lot of subpoints. And again, that depends on you. Sometimes you can put, if a point has, for example, 6 subpoints, then you can put 3 subpoints on one slide and 3 subpoints on another slide. But you have to be very, very clear on how you're dividing up things and that the audience can easily follow within the scheme of the presentation, the outline that you originally had about what you're presenting. So just make sure that the audience understands that your presentation has to be your outline in a graphic form. That's what you're aiming for. Some will have some more text than others. It makes no difference. You do not need to make sure it's uniform in that case, just as long as it's clearly and easily read. But make sure that your outline is presented within the presentation. That's what you're aiming for. And obviously, on the last slide, I have a very strong suggestion. This is not obligatory, but I would definitely suggest using the same information on the first slide and put it on this last slide. So let's go here, grab this. We're going to go down here, select him, and go in Control V. That'll throw him down. Now, you don't need to have the same format. That might look a little redundant. So you can change the colors, you can change the background, but put something that in some sense repeats what you put at the beginning, which is the name of the presenter and the title. And you can add one more thing here that says thank you. That's also very nice, and that's not a problem. But it also helps tremendously to put that as a concluding slide so that people remember finally, what in the world are we talking about? Oh, I understand. That's right, the cat's in the row. They're thanking me, the presenter is thanking me for listening, which is cool, and I most likely, especially if the presentation is a half hour long, have already forgotten the presenter's name, which typically happens. So putting your name down at the end of the presentation also is tremendously helpful in order to make sure that everyone grabs what you want here. Another small suggestion is you can summarize, as if this was an essay almost, in the second to last slide, the main points that you presented in the rest of the presentation. That's also really nice. It helps tremendously the audience. And just put it in a very synthetic form so that they get the basic ideas, just in case they might have gotten lost somewhere up in the other parts of the presentation. So you can do that too. I highly suggest it. But what I can say is I guarantee if you follow these principles, everyone is going to pay attention to your presentation. It's very, very helpful to do and follow these basic rules. You will not have a problem if you do so. Now, there's one other thing I'm going to mention before we stop this video. That is in regards to adding videos in your presentation. My suggestion is try to avoid it. Why? Because it breaks up the enthusiasm and the concentration of your audience. Now, obviously, if your video is a complete awesome video and it's totally going to get the audience more enthusiastic about what you're doing, then you can put it down. But my humble suggestion is, instead of doing that, let the audience get enthusiastic with the way you're presenting the ideas, not with the way a video does. So the videos should be used with a lot of caution, very prudently, and making sure that they're extremely helpful to your presentation and doesn't distract in any way. It's always one of the worst things I've seen in regards to presenters when they try to use videos, that they're there and they're fighting the video for the next 5 minutes because the video doesn't work or the audio doesn't work and everything else, and it just kills the atmosphere. You lose out on any type of focus that the audience had. And it's just something you want to totally, completely avoid at all costs. What can you use instead? My humble suggestion is use GIFs. Now that sounds really weird, but you can take a video and upload it onto another website that modifies GIFs, and it will transform the video into a GIF. And that gives you the possibility of motion, which many times the audience needs, especially if you're talking about something dense. And if you put that in there and the GIF is moving around and you're talking, you don't have the problem, like most people do, of having to fight a video. And the nice thing about Google Slides, it plays really well with GIFs. So you can actually go in and instead of inserting just a normal image, you could actually look for GIFs. Or if you wanted to, you can actually go and search for a GIF here. So you could say cat GIF. And if you do that, you'll find in certain moments GIFs for cats. So sometimes it's images. It's not the easiest thing to do, but usually what happens is if you can find a GIF that works, adding it isn't that complicated. So for example, if I have this one, usually you can right-click it, and it should give you the possibility of a copy link address. And copying link address should allow you to come back here and add that GIF as inserting something. So you can go to image here, inserting an image, and then go by URL. And in theory, it doesn't work all the time. For example, here it says we can't find that image URL. They're not the easiest things to work with, but if you do find a GIF that works, then it's actually pretty cool because then you can modify the GIF in a very, very easy manner for what you're looking for. So here, if we go under images, we're going to see if Google spits out a GIF here. I'm going to presuppose it won't, but sometimes it'll tell you if it's a GIF or not. The point being is that, so as not to waste any time, if you do look for GIFs, most of the time Google will have the possibility of giving you some sort of GIFs that's the most time works. So if you can grab the link like I showed you before, where you're going here and let's see, for example, here we have movements here. It's trying to indicate most likely there's a GIF. Okay, and as you can see here, this is actually a smooth GIF. This is not like a choppy one. It's actually moving around. So if I click on this guy, and we're going to try now copy link address, and we'll see what this does. Going back up here, we're going to grab this, pop this one in, and we'll see what it does. It says didn't like that, so most likely I'm doing something wrong here. So let's go back, because I should actually be able to grab this. So here we have a save link as, we have save image as, copy image, a copy image address. We're going to try this one. We're going to say copy image address. We're going to come up here. We're going to pop that guy in. And as you can see, it's loading the preview. So that's what we needed. I was grabbing the wrong one. I'm sorry about that. So let's going back here, just repeating this. If I go here and I say copy image address instead of the link address, which I was doing erroneously, if I go copy image address, what's going to allow me to do is grab that and put it in here. I can select that, pop it in here. And the nice thing is, and this depends on the internet, so sometimes it'll take some more time, but if I have this here, I can actually modify it just like a normal image. So I can go over here and I can change the shape of this guy and make him a circle if I wanted to. And that helps tremendously to do whatever I want to do. Or I can go like this. So the awesome thing about a GIF is it just acts like an image, and I have the movement I want. So my suggestion is, like I mentioned before, is to take a video and upload it to a site that transforms video to GIFs. Make it nice and smooth like this guy is, and then pop them in, and then let the movement attract the audience while you keep on talking about what you're doing, so that the audience gets the best of both worlds. It gets the motion and it gets you, instead of fighting with the video and all that type of stuff. Now, the other thing that I have to mention here is that Google Slides doesn't play nicely with music. You can't add a music file like you can in PowerPoint presentation. So you have a couple options there. You can always open up another tab, put some background music in if you really wanted to motivate the audience, or you can actually add, obviously, a YouTube video under the insert here. When it says video, it's going to allow you to open up a YouTube video. Unfortunately, right now, well, here it just added something new. This is actually for a reason. You can actually go to Google Drive and upload your own video from Google Drive, so that's pretty awesome. Before you could only add YouTube videos, but now we have Google Drive videos, which is cool. So you can upload a video there, and if the video has music, then you can pop it in there, and there's no problem. But again, if you're sacrificing the risk of having to pause, if you're sacrificing the possibility of continuing on in a fluid manner and just to put a video in, just because you want background music or if you want someone talking, be very, very careful with that. It looks much better when you're talking. The GIF does all the movement, and you're presenting it in a precise manner. It does a lot more than trying to worry about music. And again, it depends a lot on what you're doing. If you need something that's motivational, maybe you need the video. If you don't need that, better to avoid it and just focus on the essentials, so that the people love your presentation because you're very clear, precise, to the point, looks professional, symmetrical, everything ordered, and everything was presented well. Obviously this isn't, but you get the point that I'm talking about. So just try as much as possible to focus on the essentials so that your presentation comes out in the best way possible without having to worry about anything else. If you do that, again, I guarantee it'll go well. If you try to deviate from these principles, many times you'll end up with problems, which is what we're trying to avoid. I hope this video helped you. If you have any comments, please leave it down in the comments below, and I'll try to respond to them when I can. Thank you very much, and take care.